The lecture hall of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute stretched 300 meters across, its translucent dome revealing the twin moons of Arconus Prime hanging like pale ornaments in the violet sky. Professor Vexthal, a distinguished Kaltorian scholar whose chitinous carapace bore the golden markings of 6 decades of academic excellence, stood at the central podium, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled students from 100 different worlds. And so we arrive at the fundamental truth of evolutionary biology. Vexthal's translator rendered his clicking speech into galactic standard. No sentient species has ever evolved on, nor can survive long-term exposure to, what we classify as Deathworld conditions. Gravity exceeding 1.2 standard units creates insurmountable physiological barriers. The skeletal structure required would be too dense for complex neural development. The cardiovascular strain would... A hand shot up in the back row. Vexthal's anterior eyes swiveled with mild irritation. The posterior pair remained fixed on his data slate. Yes? A question already? I haven't even reached the empirical evidence section. Then why am I standing? The voice carried clearly across the hall, and Vexthal's translator struggled momentarily with the tonal patterns. Too much bass, too much force behind each syllable. His eyes finally focused on the source, a human female, one of the 2 peculiar exchange students from that newly discovered planet called Earth. Madison Chen stood up fully, and Vexthal heard the collective intake of breath from the other students. She was tall by most species standards, her frame seeming almost impossibly solid. Beside her, her companion, a human male named Jake Morrison, remained seated but wore an expression that Vexthal's cultural database identified as a smirk. I'm sorry? Vexthal's vocal sacs fluttered in confusion. You said no species survives Deathworld gravity, Madison continued, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made several nearby students lean away instinctively. Earth's gravity is 1.4 standard units. I was born there, raised there. I'm standing here right now in your 0.8 standard gravity, and honestly, Professor, I feel like I could jump through your ceiling. The lecture hall erupted in whispers. A Thalasian student in the 3rd row actually fainted, its crystalline form tinkling as it collapsed. Jake stood up too, rolling his shoulders in a gesture that made his muscular frame even more apparent. She's not exaggerating, Jake added. We've been here 3 weeks. And the hardest part has been remembering not to move too fast. Yesterday, I accidentally jumped over a transport shuttle trying to board it. Vexthal's claws clicked against the podium in distress. This couldn't be right. He'd reviewed the data on these humans when they'd arrived. Their planet was listed as Class 7 hazardous, gravity listed as... He checked his slate again. No. There had to be an error in the translation algorithms. Surely your planet's classification is mistaken, Vexthal said, his voice strained. Species from Deathworlds don't achieve spaceflight. They don't develop complex civilizations. The caloric requirements alone would make us excellent hunters, Madison interrupted, stepping into the aisle. Each footfall, even softened by her obvious restraint, created small vibrations in the floor. Would drive us to develop agriculture early, would make us incredible endurance runners. Professor, my ancestors literally hunted prey by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. Jake descended the steps with predatory grace. And the bone density you mentioned? Yeah, we've got that. Makes us harder to break. The cardiovascular system you said was impossible? Humans have 4-chambered hearts that can operate efficiently for over 100 standard years under crushing pressure. Vexthal backed away from the podium. His survival instincts, honed over millions of years of Kaltorian evolution, were screaming warnings. These weren't just students. These were apex predators from a world that should have crushed complex life before it began. But, but you're so friendly, squeaked a Pytharan student from the front row. You share food, you laugh, you helped me with my astrophysics homework. Madison's expression softened. We're social too. Had to be. Earth didn't just have high gravity, Professor. We had predators with better teeth, better claws, better armor than us. We had weather that could kill in minutes. We had diseases, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods. We survived by working together, by being smart, by being stubborn. Jake nodded. Deathworld doesn't just mean the planet tries to kill you, it means you learn to adapt, you learn to overcome. You learn that giving up isn't an option. Vexathal's legs trembled. His entire academic career was built on Deathworld research, and he'd never encountered an actual Deathworld species. They were theoretical, after all, impossible. Yet here stood two of them, discussing their impossible existence with the casual confidence of beings who'd evolved in hell and decided to reach for the stars anyway. I need to revise my lecture, Vexthal admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Madison smiled, a gesture that showed flat, omnivorous teeth, and extended her hand in the human custom of friendship. Maybe we could help. Jake and I could give a guest lecture next week about Earth. Show everyone that impossible is just a starting point for humans. Vexthal stared at the offered hand. It looked so simple, so harmless. Yet he'd just watched this young female casually dismantle decades of accepted scientific doctrine while standing in gravity that was, for her, barely a gentle breeze. He reached out with one claw and gently touched her palm. I would be honored. As the two humans returned to their seats, moving with the careful deliberation of beings trying not to break everything around them, Vexthal looked out at his class of shocked students. Change of lesson plan, he announced. Today, we're going to discuss why scientific absolutes are dangerous and why the galaxy is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. In the back row, Madison and Jake exchanged a quiet fist bump, another human gesture that, like everything else about them, contained barely restrained power. The galaxy, Vexthal realized, was about to learn what humanity had always known. Impossibility was just another challenge to overcome.